So, what does LGTBQIA movement in Tunisia, Extinction Rebellion, and feminist movement in Central and South America have in common? Well, they all use nonviolent methods to install social change. So, welcome everyone to this session. In this day and age, we feel that it's more important than ever to talk about how we can change unjust structures and fight for equality and human rights. And today we're going to talk about that. So I'm Sandra, and you will be with us for the next 30 minutes to talk about how we all can engage in social change. So what are you going to talk about, Anna?
Yes, that's right. My name is Anna, and I'm here to give you some examples of how you can work with community building and show solidarity and creating alliances online. And we're going to hear of one of the examples from you, Leo.
Yes, thank you. That's right. I'm going to talk a bit about how we in Mexico adapted our work to this very strange situation that the pandemic has been, and also a bit of how the civil society organizations had to adapt their work and their activism.
Yeah, so who are we? Who are SWEFOR? We work with peace building and nonviolence, and we try to seek solution, like nonviolent solution to conflict, whether it's a conflict that you have in your workplace or with your friends, or if there's a bigger violent conflict going on in a region. So that's what we're trying to do. We also work with advocacy for human security, trying to working a bit more with prevention of armed conflict instead of armed conflicts. And also we work against armed trade and nuclear weapons. Obviously, we also, and that's what we're going to talk about a bit later, we enable peace actors in different parts of the world, like in Maghreb region, in South Sudan, in Colombia, to work with peace building. And also we work with supporting local activists and human rights defenders in Central America and in Mexico and Colombia and Guatemala. And we will hear more later from Leo about that. So I began telling you that a few examples of some movements that are using nonviolent action. So what is nonviolent action? You may ask yourself, and if you don't, I will tell you anyway. So as I mentioned earlier, we seek to prevent violence and violent conflicts with nonviolent methods. And we do that without using violence ourselves and without using the threat of violence. So when we use nonviolent methods for social change, we focus both on the problem, like if we're resisting against a very powerful authoritarian regime, like in Morocco, or if we, for instance, if we are fighting for human rights, or we're trying to change something. So we're both resisting against injustice, but we're also focusing on what we want to see instead, like building new structure. So you can say that nonviolence is both resistance and building another society. So also we do this because not only because we believe it in our hearts that it's the right way to do things, but also because it has proven to be much more efficient than if you use violence. Researchers Maria G. Stevens and Erica Chenoweth, they are two American researchers who have been looking at for several years, like for 20 years, they have been looking at struggles that people are using to install change in society, using nonviolent methods and using violent methods. And they found that working with nonviolent methods to install change, you're much more likely to succeed. In fact, you're over 50% more likely to succeed if you're using nonviolent methods. Because when using nonviolent methods, you can involve more people, because it's not just the military, or it's not just people with guns. So you can involve everyone, even young people, children, women, men. You can really reach out and have a bigger reach. Also, it's proven more effective when you set your goal and it's higher. You can reach that goal better And also, finally, one big success with nonviolent actions is that you, after you dealt with this campaign or the struggle, you can build on that structure. If you have a war, obviously you have wounded people, you have lost infrastructure, you have this. You have a lot of problems that you have to attend to, but if you have done it in a non-violent method, then you can just proceed to have this to continue with the democratic development. So they've also looked in some of the recent studies, Erica Chenoweth and Maria J. Stevens, on what can we do, in society to enable this kind of actions, because as a professor that is called Jamila Rakib, she's from Afghanistan, she said that if you give people knowledge about nonviolent methods, they will use them, because I think most wars are because of you don't know what to do else. So that's why SWEFOR also needs to work with this, teaching nonviolent methods to stop violent conflict. And always, of course, we seek to really seek what is the root causes of this violent conflict and try to work more on prevention and also to find solution on that root causes. And also by respecting the opponent, you don't, trying not to, as Jean Saro, a Palestinian woman, an activist, she says that you have to get rid of this enemy images in your head, like that's the enemy. No, you have to see the person and separate the person from its actions. So it's about respecting the opponent as well. And also, as Anna is going to talk a bit more about later on, is that nonviolent activism seek to strengthen and create alliance with marginalized groups. So we're really working, from building people power from below. So it's really about mass mobilization and about engaging people from different contexts in order to getting a wider representation. And that's also available after you've done this struggle. You are including more people. Also combining different methods and work without the system and also within the system. So you're really creating resistance to unjust structures. And so you can use examples from all over the world. I mean, the feminist movement in Mexico, they're working in Argentina. You can look at Extinction Rebellion in Europe. You could get inspiration from farmers and indigenous people fighting for against ecocide, against the environmental violence that we do that we're performing on the nature. And also the Hirak movement of Algeria, where young people are trying to engage in against corruption. In Nigeria, where they're fighting corruption, and people in Somalia, Guinea, Djibouti, and Mali fighting against female genital mutilation. So, and also the LGTBQI movement in Poland, in Tunisia. I mean, I could go on and on. There's so many examples of a nonviolent struggle going on in the world, Lebanon. So we have to really focus on that and read about that, because we don't read about it in the news. They have this awesome campaign ending violence against women in this little society outside of Djibouti. So focus on that and get inspiration. And also, it's always important to support each other. I mean, we need each other in this world, and we have to create alliances and we have to stop fighting among us. So how can you enable that, Anna? How can you build, community building and create alliances?
Yeah, thank you. Well, that's a big question. But
Yes.
I'm going to try and
over to you.
I'm going to try and answer by giving some examples. Because one of the things we want to do here today is to inspire and enable and show you the possibilities to act in non-violent methods without being able to meet physically. Not being able to travel and meet shouldn't stop us from standing up for human rights and against injustice being done. Social movements around the world are, as Sandra said, as much needed now as it ever has been. And the digital era has taken giant leaps in these times of a worldwide pandemic. And the violent actions, the non-violent actions and activities are in many ways as powerful online as it is in physical reality. One of the pillars of non-violent techniques is standing up for a third party. And how can you do that? Well, the keywords here today are community building, creating alliances, and showing solidarity. And I'll give you some examples of that. My first example is the movement I am here. It's a hashtag created in Sweden called #JagArHär. It's a civil courage movement countering hate and misinformation online to protect freedom of speech and democracy. Members of I Am Here are acting every day on social media by using their presence to react when racism and prejudice are being shown. Doing so, they counterspeak and prevent hate speech from being spread. They stand up when others are being exposed to hatred and threats online. That loose organization, which is founded in Sweden, as I said, is in many ways run by trained volunteers. Now, as you can see, they are all spread all over the world, and online is their actual workplace. My second example is a great way of showing solidarity. In the summer of 2020, the movement of Black Lives Matter started in US, but quickly a lot of people all over the world wanted to show solidarity and express their experiences of police violence and racism. Quickly, Black Lives Matter Sweden started, and the importance here are the words "in solidarity," as we can see. Not being able to meet and demonstrate and still wanting to show solidarity, they created an online campaign where they urge people to check in to the American embassy at a certain date and at a certain time. Thousands and thousands of people checked in at the American embassy the 2nd of June in 2020. And by doing so, they showed a lot of people that they stood in solidarity with Black Lives Matter US and Black Lives Matter Sweden. One organization who has made it easy to create these online campaigns is the organization Skiftet. They call themselves Democracy in Movement. Their goal is to make it easier to create online campaigns for social movements and change. The way of making it easy to create the change that you want to see. Another organization that is a great example of community building is the Colombian feministic organization Cisma Mujer. They started in the 90s, and they saw the importance of creating an organization that combined people with faith-based, driven by faith-based and secular feminism. Thank you. And they came together and created one organization. So instead of being two organizations working for the same goal, they worked for years, coming together and creating their common goals to make it more powerful. And this year, we have also seen many initiatives like digital pride parades, online campaigns, and creating an online meeting culture. And one of the things we in Swefor had to deal with was how to work in this year of quarantine. And Leo, you are going to tell us more about how you did that in Mexico.
Yes, thank you, Anna. And well, as you say, we've been working for many years, really, but during this past crazy year in Mexico. And I thought that I'd start by telling a bit about how we normally work in Mexico so that we can see the difference, really, between this year's and those that have passed. So SWEFOR's had observers in Mexico for the last 20 years or a bit more, and we've had a permanent presence in the country's southernmost state, Chiapas, since 2013. As international observers, which is our job there, our main work is to work for the protection of and provide support to the human rights defenders that we accompany there, trying to work for the amplification of their safety and their civic space of action. And in order to accomplish this, we have a few tools, or strategic axes, if you will. First of all, we've got the physical presence, where we're physically present during certain activities, for example, during meetings or travels or protests. And in this way, we show in a concrete manner that the international community is present and watching. And we can also document and inform about possible security incidents. Secondly, we've got our strategic communication, in which we, for example, facilitate meetings between international organs and national authorities and the human rights defenders we work with. We also work with the diffusion of information, and we remind the duty bearers that the work of the human rights defenders that we accompany is legal, legitimate, and that it is the state's obligation to protect them from harm. And in this work with the strategic communication, we always operate within the international rights frameworks. And finally, we've got the trainings or workshops in self-protection, where we, together with the organizations that we accompany, work to develop protection mechanisms that can be suitable for their specific needs. So through these tools, we try to be of use to the human rights defenders and the organizations that we accompany in Chiapas as well as elsewhere in the world. And in Chiapas, some of the main challenges when it comes to human rights are the access to land and territory, the access to justice, and the widespread impunity. In Mexico, overall, the estimated rates of crimes actually getting solved is no higher than 2%. And this, in combination with the criminalization of human rights defenders and the harsh political rhetoric towards them, are contributing factors as to why we and other international actors choose to preserve our presence there. And when we accompany an organization, it is always after first receiving a petition. And this international presence of observers in the field is something that's been seen as having a rather positive effect on the human rights defenders' possibility to realize their work and, well, do their activities in Chiapas as well as elsewhere. But as the theme of this session is also to mention the pandemic, as we all know, that came and it changed everything. Before the pandemic, Mexico was already the fourth most dangerous country in the world to defend human rights in, according to the organization Frontline Defenders. And for many organizations and activists, this situation got aggravated during the sanitary contingency. If the justice system was already practically inaccessible to large groups before, the closing of the prosecutors' and district attorneys' offices made access impossible altogether. The access to healthcare became increasingly difficult too. And for many indigenous groups, the information about the pandemic and how to protect yourself from it was unavailable in the languages that they speak. Organizations and journalists working along the southern border with migration bore witness of a rather alarming situation where migrants and asylum seekers got trapped on either side of the border without being able to neither head back nor move on. Migrant caravans were dissolved, and in Mexican society, overall, the suspicion and the xenophobia against migrants increased. So, as the civic space of action started shrinking during quarantine and lockdown, it also became clear that some groups were more vulnerable to this than others. Human rights defenders whose main activities depended on the participation in the public space through, for example, performances or protests and manifestations were among the hardest struck. When the streets stopped being a place for activism and all the engagement was sent indoors, many women's organizations and LGBTQIA collectives faced a rather dire situation because some of them lost their funding, others lost their time due to increased domestic demands, and others started losing their members. Because in Mexico, an estimate of nearly 10 women are killed daily. And during the pandemic, the registered amount of violence against women increased. Meanwhile, in one of his speeches during this period, the president dismissed 90% of the 911 emergency phone calls about domestic violence as being fake. Despite the challenges presented by the pandemic, many of the human rights defenders and organizations started adapting to this new reality. The inaccessibility to justice led to human rights defenders assuming a sometimes central role in community conflict mediation. Many worked for the improvement of the accessibility to information, and community projects were launched where people, through the use of traditional and accessible medicine, were taught to stay healthy and protect themselves from the pandemic. In the coastal region of Chiapas, one of few human rights centers is Centro de Derechos Humanos Digna Ochoa, which is an organization that we've accompanied since 2014. And they work mainly with questions regarding the access to justice, against discrimination and gender-based violence, and for the right to a clean and unpolluted environment. During quarantine, they concentrated their efforts to the diffusion of information, resuming and spreading national regulations and restrictions about the pandemic, but also creating infographics about, for example, mental health in lockdown, and offering legal counseling and advice regarding what to do if you'd been the victim of domestic violence. And later on, when the healthcare system started to get saturated, the center intensified their work with their community healthcare promoters program, educating and equipping a network of healthcare promoters, and through them bringing basic medical attention to a number of coastal communities that before had had no access to these services. So their idea here was actually to fight the misinformation and the distrust that they saw spread through society, and doing so by strengthening the communities and their capacity in self-care and protection through their own members. Another example of adaptation is found in the mountains in San Cristóbal de las Casas, where the LGBTQIA collective Chubajetic also had to change all their plans for the year. During the quarantine, they initiated a statewide survey about the impacts of the pandemic on the LGBTQIA population, an initiative that no state authority had taken. Their meetings and manifestations turned into webinars and online campaigns, and the San Cristóbal Pride Parade took the shape of a soundscape in which people participated from terraces and rooftops. So it's a bit what you also mentioned earlier, Anna. And as you can imagine, it was not easy for any of the human rights defenders or organizations in Chiapas or anywhere else in the world. But some of these new ways that had to be explored started showing rather encouraging results. Like, for example, now that we speak about the fight against discrimination and for LGBTQIA equality, in June, Mexico City was actually the scene of what's been described as the world's largest digital pride parade.
Oh.
But you might ask yourselves, what has this to do with us? Well,
What's SWEFOR's role?
what's
Swedish
our role in this?
Fellowship of Reconciliation. I think I missed.
Yes.
I didn't say that, but yes, All Kristna Fredsrörelsen in Swedish.
Well,
sorry.
We did not organize the world's largest digital pride parade.
We didn't. Oh,
No, unfortunately.
darn.
But, well, when our physical presence in the field got impossible due to restrictions and the pandemic, well, we too had to start finding ways of adapting our method and our work to this new reality and this new context that we found ourselves in. The overall fear we felt was that if everybody's talking about the pandemic, well, what does that mean that they're omitting? Like, what atrocities are being committed in the shadows, and whose nonviolent struggle isn't receiving the attention it would need in order to really succeed? By maintaining a close contact with the organizations and human rights defenders that we accompany, we started discovering how we, through our online presence, could actually be of help to them in enhancing their space of action and their their protection. How? You might ask yourselves.
Yes.
Well, for instance, we began lifting their preoccupations in our newsletter, and we started also collaborating on online campaigns regarding, for example, forced displacement in Chiapas or the detained disappeared.
Mm.
Another part of our work during this period was the creating and maintaining of networks and alliances, which, as you both have already mentioned, can be an essential part of any nonviolent struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's rather peculiar because the pandemic ended up opening some new doors for us. And it made it possible for us to reach out to authorities and organs that before had been outside of our reach, but who now, thanks to this new digital meeting culture, were just a Zoom call away. We came into contact with more organizations from the Mexican civil society and also had the opportunity to facilitate meetings between human rights defenders and national and international actors relevant to their work. And later on, as some of the organizations started returning to the fieldwork, but before we could, we kept notifying the authorities about their activities in order to legitimize them, and also informing about the state's obligation in terms of protection and our online monitoring of the event. So the impact of all this is, of course, a bit hard to measure. But one thing that is certain is that when the pandemic started loosening its grip on Chiapas after this first wave, most organizations and human rights defenders were still there. And our physical presence was once more requested. We finally got to meet the organizations again, and they told us that the online presence and support that we and other allies had offered to them was actually part of what had made them feel less alone and being able to keep doing their work.
That's good.
But now what?
Now what?
Now what is the question? Well, we don't really know for how much more time or for how much longer this pandemic will keep affecting us, or which long-term effects it will have on countries like Mexico and their civil societies. But we do believe that an enhanced strategic online presence can be a vital part of a non-violent struggle, providing a valuable alternative to the physical presence in times as challenging and strange as these. And I think that if we and others can keep adapting when needed, the support to and enabling of non-violent struggles around the world will, as already mentioned, should be just as possible as ever.
Yeah. So let's end with that positive, on a brighter note. Thank you all so much for listening. We are Anna, Leo, and Sandra from Swedish Fellowship of Reconciliation, or Kristna Fredsrörelsen. If you want to know more about how you can work and inspire and enable nonviolent activism on a global level, online or off, please don't hesitate to go to our website. We will post it here below, so you can check out if you want to learn more about nonviolent methods or just our work. You're very welcome. So, any last words from you?
The struggle continues.
It sure does.
It does.
Thank you so much.